Welcome, brave soul, I am the forgotten storyteller. Before we begin, tap that like button if you dare, and drop a comment below telling me where in the world you're listening from. And if you make it to the end of this video, I hope to see you in the next story. I hope you're ready, because I am. Let's begin. There are trails that don't appear on any map. Paths the earth itself seems to erase, hiding them from those who should never walk them. Some say they lead nowhere, but others whisper that they lead directly into the jaws of something ancient. Something hungry, and if you take one step too far, you may never step back at all. Our story today begins with Mariah. Mariah was 21 years old, sharp and vibrant, a girl who thrived on independence. She wasn't reckless, not really, but she lived with a hunger for solitude, for silence, for the kind of peace that only the wilderness could provide. While most of her peers drowned themselves in the static of screens and social feeds, Mariah preferred the crunch of pine needles beneath her boots, the smell of wet soil after a storm. She had a blog, sure, but it wasn't for fame or followers. It was a personal journal of her treks into the wild, a chronicle of small triumphs over the vastness of nature. She never gave away exact locations. Safety, privacy, those things mattered. And yet, curiosity has a way of luring us past safety, past reason. The plan was simple enough. A weekend alone in the Appalachian foothills, following the Black Hollow Trail. It wasn't well known, and that was the appeal. Few hikers, fewer tourists. Just endless trees, ridges that touched the sky, and silence thick enough to drown out the noise of civilization. She packed light. Tent, water filters, snacks. Phone, GPS, compass, because Mariah knew how easily the forest could turn on someone careless. But she wasn't careless. Not her. She was strong, fit, and practiced. She trusted her instincts. For the first day, everything went perfectly. The sun was warm, dappling through oak and birch leaves. A mild breeze whispered through the undergrowth. She recorded snippets for her blog, her voice calm, light, her laughter carried by the wind. When night fell, she pitched her tent, journaled, then fell asleep beneath a dome of stars. On the second day, though, things shifted. She found herself thinking of an old hiker's journal she'd read weeks before. A faded blog post from a man who claimed to have discovered a hidden overlook, a place where the trees opened to reveal a view of the valley so breathtaking it was almost holy. His directions were vague, outdated, but Mariah's curiosity burned too deep. So when the trail forked, she chose the unmarked path. Just for a while, she told herself. Just long enough to see if the old man's overlook was real. The deeper she went, the more the air seemed to shift. Birds grew scarce. The forest floor dampened. The trees loomed closer, their bark dark with moss, their branches bending like crooked arms. And then, the storm. It came fast, like the sky tearing itself open. Rain crashed through the canopy, blinding her. Landmarks blurred. The trail dissolved into mud and shadow. Her GPS, dead. She tapped it, shook it, nothing. By the time she realized how far she'd strayed, night was already collapsing across the forest. That was when she first felt it. That presence. Mariah had camped alone dozens of times. She knew the sounds of the woods, the rustle of deer, the distant yip of coyotes, the scamper of squirrels through brush. This wasn't that. This was different. At first it was subtle. Footsteps just barely out of sync with her own. The snap of a twig where no weight should have been. Whispers, hushed, fleeting, that slid through the trees like smoke. Not words she could understand, just a cadence, a rhythm, like wind dragging through the throats of dead leaves. She told herself it was nerves along with fatigue. The storm had disoriented her. But every step forward was heavier than the last, her chest tight, her pulse erratic. The forest didn't feel alive anymore. It felt watchful. She should have stopped. Should have pitched her tent and waited for morning. That was protocol. But fear, raw, primal fear, drove her forward. The idea of stopping, of letting the thing behind her catch up, was worse. So she walked on. By the time the rain thinned to a drizzle, the moon was out. A pale, sickly light filtered through the canopy, and the forest seemed frozen in its glow. Mariah's phone gave its last flicker of life and died. No light. No signal. Just her breath steaming in the suddenly frigid air. She thought of her blog. How no one knew exactly where she was. If something happened here, if she vanished, no one would find her. The thought drilled into her skull. And then she stopped walking. Because in front of her, framed in silver moonlight, stood something that was not human. It towered, its head nearly brushing the lower branches. Limbs elongated, unnatural, bent like a spider forced into human shape. Skin the color of ash, stretched too tightly across its frame. And its eyes, dear God, its eyes, burned red, glowing, pulsing like embers from a fire that refused to die. The air dropped so suddenly she saw frost crystallize on the leaves around her. Her breath came out in thick clouds, her body shivering despite her sweat. And then it spoke. "You are mine now. Sell your soul, or die here alone, forgotten." Mariah's body locked. Every instinct screamed run, but her legs were frozen, her throat clamped tight. "I'll do it," she whispered, the words trembling from her lips before she fully realized she'd said them. Instantly, pain lanced through her head, sharp, searing just below her ear. She cried out, clutching her neck, her fingers slick with blood. But when she pulled them back, she saw no wound, just the stain. The creature leaned forward, its breath colder than ice. "From this night you must bring me others. One every 7 days. Feed the hunger, or you will suffer worse than death." And then in a blink of an eye, the forest shifted. The monster was gone. The storm had vanished. The mud beneath her boots was dry, the trees familiar again. She was standing at the start of the main trail, the same place she'd begun 2 days earlier. Her gear was intact, her tent packed, and it was morning, as though nothing had ever happened. But Mariah knew better, because the blood still clung to her fingertips. And in the back of her skull, she still heard that voice. Mariah returned home the following day. To anyone watching, she looked tired but unharmed. Just another hiker finishing a weekend away. No one asked questions. No one noticed the tremor in her hands as she unlocked her apartment door. She dropped her pack, showered, changed into fresh clothes. But inside, she was no longer whole. At first, she thought maybe it had been a hallucination, stress, exhaustion, dehydration. She combed through her blog drafts, reread the notes she'd taken, checked her GPS logs. Nothing unusual, no evidence. And yet, when she closed her eyes, she heard the whisper. The voice, vibrating inside her skull like the toll of some invisible bell. The memory of red eyes burned into her mind like afterimages. Sleep offered no rest. That first night back in her bed, she dreamed of trees that bent and writhed like serpents. Of cold air so sharp it sliced her lungs. Of her own reflection, eyes glowing, smile too wide, beckoning her into the dark. She woke screaming, sheets damp with sweat, her pulse thrumming like war drums. It would have been easy to dismiss, if not for what came next. On the 7th night, Mariah entered her bedroom and froze. Something lay neatly upon her pillow. A folded piece of paper, old, edges curling. She picked it up with trembling hands. The paper was brittle and fragile. The writing across it was thick, uneven, scrawled in what looked like dried blood. 2 words: "It's time." Her breath left her body in a rush. The ultimatum was real. It hadn't been a dream. The pact had begun. She argued with herself, pacing her apartment like a caged animal. She couldn't bring family, couldn't betray friends. The thought of offering them up, feeding them to that thing, was unbearable. But then she remembered the voice, the blood, the frost, the promise of suffering beyond death. Something inside her cracked. If she had to choose between damning herself or strangers, then strangers would have to do. It began subtly. Mariah started frequenting nightclubs she'd never dared enter before. Dark, thumping spaces full of faces blurred by alcohol and smoke. She dressed differently, less like a hiker, more like a shadow in silk. Men noticed her. Women too. She smiled in ways she never used to, leaned close, whispered promises she never intended to keep. Her first target was a man in his 40s. Alone, already half drunk and careless. She flirted, feigned interest, let him buy her a drink. When he asked where she lived, she offered a coy smile and suggested a shortcut through the woods. The plan formed itself with terrifying ease. The forest welcomed them like an open mouth. The deeper they went, the quieter the world became. At first, the man laughed, joked, tried to kiss her. But when the air turned cold, when the leaves stiffened with frost, he hesitated. Mariah stopped walking and turned. Her heart broke as she whispered the only words she could manage. "I'm sorry." The forest hushed. And then the eyes appeared, red like a fire, burning and alive. The man barely had time to turn before the shadows swallowed him. His scream split the night, short, jagged, and then silence. Mariah didn't look. She couldn't. She ran, her body trembling, her throat raw from the sobs she didn't dare release until she was miles away. But when she collapsed onto her apartment floor, gasping, shaking, she realized something horrifying. The blood on her hands was gone. And for the first time in days, the whispering had stopped. It became a cycle, more like a ritual. Every 7 days she returned. Each offering swallowed by the red eyes, each soul traded for her own survival. But with each one Mariah changed. Her reflection flickered in mirrors, shifting, her eyes darkening, her smile curling unnaturally. Sometimes her reflection didn't move when she did. Sometimes it lingered a moment too long. She began hearing whispers even outside the forest. In her shower, in the hum of her refrigerator, in the static of her radio. Voices she almost recognized. Pleading, cursing and crying. Her dreams showed her things she didn't want to see. Herself, older, hollow, leading hundreds into the woods. A procession of the damned, her face pale, her eyes burning red. And guilt gnawed at her. She noticed carvings on the trees near her home. Symbols she didn't understand, jagged, spiraling shapes that hadn't been there before. Her phone lit up with numbers she didn't know. Voicemails of nothing but breathing. Once she played one aloud only to hear a child's voice whisper, clear as day, "You're next." Her chest tightened. Her world unraveled. And still the days ticked down. By the sixth victim, Mariah was numb. A hollow shell going through the motions. She no longer cried. No longer hesitated. But when the 42nd night arrived, the night of the seventh offering, something changed. She met him in the city. A young man close to her age. Not drunk, not desperate. Just kind and warm. The type of stranger who reminded her of her brother. The way he spoke, the way he smiled without expecting anything in return. When he offered to walk her home, she nearly declined. Nearly fled. But the pact burned in her mind like a brand and she couldn't stop herself. As they walked, he glanced at her, concern in his eyes. "You seem sad," he said. "You don't have to be alone." Her throat tightened. For the first time since it all began, she wanted to believe him. But when she returned home that night, she found it again. The message. Not on paper this time, but carved, dripping into her bedroom wall. "Blood. One more. Or it will be you." Mariah wept. She knew what she had to do. The night of the seventh offering began like the others. Mariah dressed carefully, painted her lips red, hid the hollowness in her eyes with mascara and eyeshadow. She walked the city streets like a phantom draped in silk, searching for someone to lead into the maw. And fate, or perhaps cruelty, delivered him. The young man she'd met before. The one who reminded her of her brother. The one who had said, "You don't have to be alone." His smile was gentle, disarming. He offered again to walk her home. She agreed. Her stomach twisted as she led him, step by step, toward Black Hollow. Every part of her body screamed to stop, to turn back, to confess. But her feet betrayed her. The pact held her like invisible chains. When the trees swallowed them, when the night grew unnaturally still, she knew the moment had come. She stopped. Her breath shook. The young man glanced around, puzzled. "Strange place for a shortcut," he joked. His voice carried no fear, only trust. Mariah's lips trembled as she whispered, "I'm sorry." The forest answered with silence. Then frost and then the glow. The eyes. Red like a burning fire and alive, it was merciless. The young man turned, confusion flashing into terror as the shadows stirred. Mariah's hands balled into fists. This was the moment she was supposed to step aside and let the hunger take him. But something inside her broke. "No, I won't let you take him," she screamed, shoving him back, away from the encroaching dark. "Take me instead. I'll stay. Just let him go." Her cry echoed through the forest like shattered glass. The eyes blazed brighter. A sound filled the air, not laughter exactly, but something worse. A cracking, splintering noise, like ice shattering across a frozen lake. "You were never meant to survive," the creature hissed, its voice vibrating through bone and marrow. "You are the door. The seventh sacrifice was always meant to be you." Mariah's body convulsed, her chest heaving as the forest bent and warped around her. The young man staggered back, eyes wide, unable to comprehend what he was seeing. The ground beneath her feet split with veins of frost. Her breath poured out in clouds, her skin paling, veins darkening. She screamed, clawing at herself as shadows poured into her mouth, her eyes, her ears. The creature loomed closer, its form melting into hers, its burning gaze piercing through her skull. And then, complete silence. The forest stilled. The red glow vanished. The young man stumbled, gasping, clutching at his chest. The frost thawed beneath his feet. The woods seemed ordinary again. Almost. He spun, calling for Mariah. But she was gone. Only the echo of her last scream lingered in the air. Something brushed his hand. He looked down to find a single feather. It was black and glossy, cold to the touch as though carved from stone. Shaking, he pocketed it, then stumbled toward the distant glow of the road. His mind reeled with questions, with terror, but survival pulled him forward. Dawn crept across the horizon, casting gold through the trees. And that was when he saw it. Deep in the forest, far behind him, a figure stood among the trees. It was tall and pale, and very still, eyes glowing red. Its face was now her face. Mariah's face, something about it looked wrong. She now had the look of a predator, just about to start hunting. Her lips twisted in a smile that didn't belong to her. Her eyes glowed with hunger. Her body radiated the cold of the grave. The creature had kept its word. The seventh sacrifice had been made. But it wasn't the young man. It was Mariah. The young man never spoke of what he saw. Not fully. Who would believe him? He told himself it was a nightmare, that the woods had played tricks on him. But some nights, when he closed his eyes, he swore he heard her voice, calling and begging, sometimes laughing. And others, far less fortunate, would come to know the truth, because Mariah was gone. But something wearing her face lingered in the shadows of Black Hollow, watching, waiting and searching. Her story had ended, but the Blood Pact had only just begun. There are many ways to survive. Some bargain, some betray, some burn. But the cost is always the same. The person you were dies the moment you whisper, "I'll do it." Mariah thought she was outsmarting the hunger, trading strangers for her freedom. But she was never the predator. She was always the offering, always the door. And somewhere in the endless woods, her smile is still waiting for the next soul foolish enough to wander too far. Let us know in the comments, would you have made the same choice as Mariah and sold your soul?
Ready for spine-chilling tales that will haunt your thoughts? Subscribe to Forgotten Storyteller for eerie narrations, unsettling mysteries, and haunting stories you won't forget. Hit the bell icon so you never miss a story, because some stories refuse to stay buried. Join us, if you dare,